Greetings, everyone. My name is Ayman Tarabishi. I am the Deputy Chair of the Department of Management at the George Washington University. I'm also President and CEO of the International Council for Small Business. We are all here today because of GW Entrepreneurship Week, and I am very excited about GW Entrepreneurship Week. This is our second year that we have a week-long worth of activities. Today is our second day of events, and this is our second webinar of the day. Earlier today, we had family business, and now we're talking about social entrepreneurship, which is really something that I'm really admire, and I think is very important here. So I would like to introduce the presenters as well, and the host of the session. So the session itself is called Social Entrepreneurship, and the panelist, the first one, her name is Michelle Avalos, co-founder and director of operations of Impact Hub in Houston. Michelle is on a mission to empower other change makers by equipping them with tools needed to transform their vision into action for good. I think this is a very noble cause, and nobody will disagree that this is something that we need more and more today. And then the host of the session and the moderator of the session is Miss Brenda Rios Brombacher. She is the Director of Entrepreneurial Initiatives and Community Relations and an ICSB K-Hub Director in Houston Community College. Brenda, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for joining the session. And I'll stay quiet now and let you run the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarabishi, and hello everyone. Welcome to our session today. As Dr. Tarabishi mentioned, we're going to be talking about social entrepreneurship, and I just can't wait to hear from Michelle, who is going to be teaching us all of these really good things for our session. I also want to give thanks, for International Council for Small Business for inviting us here today and to be a part of this amazing conference. So thank you so much. Just a little bit about HTC before we get started. We are part of the ICSB Knowledge Hub Network, where we, along with a couple of other universities and higher ed institutions, we're assisting students as well as entrepreneurs for everything that's happening on the entrepreneurship policy to programming around the world. Brenda Rios Brombacher. I'm currently serving as the Director of Entrepreneurial Initiatives and Community Relations at Houston Community College, where I help promote and encourage partnerships with small business organizations to create much more resources in the city. I started actually back 10 years ago, since 2010, with the U.S. Department of State with the Global Entrepreneurship Program. So I actually had the privilege to see entrepreneurship policy firsthand and be a part of entrepreneurship delegations. Another factoid, I'm also a doctoral candidate in business administration at Walden University. And my focus there is really to assist the Latino-owned small businesses and understand how we can diminish the barriers. HTC itself is a minority small business, a minority serving institution. We are the second largest in the nation, and as well, we have 23 commuter campuses around the city. We really focus on empowering our student population, and 85% are minority. So it really is reflected to the diversity we have in Houston. Our Centers for Entrepreneurship really is, our mission is be here as a resource hub, not only as a knowledge hub, but be responsive to community needs, drive economic development, and lead to student success. We're also part of the Office of Entrepreneurial Initiatives, which not only Centers for Entrepreneurship are catered to our entrepreneurs in the communities, but we also house what is the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Initiative, the Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency, as well as the Corporate College. And I wanted to celebrate this with all of you. Just 2 weeks ago, we got announced as the 2020 Entrepreneurial College of the Year. So we are just much more honored. Thank you to our partners, to our community, to the entrepreneurs and students that really make this a success, and also, be a part of our entrepreneurial journey.
So Brenda, can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
So on behalf of the International Council for Small Business and all its members worldwide, and we congratulate you and we recognize you for being the Entrepreneurial College of the Year from NACI here. This is a remarkable feat. This is just absolutely amazing here. And ICSB takes full credit for this because you are part of the Knowledge Hub. So your success is our success. So we are recognizing this, and we are celebrating with you in this, and we'll be sharing it in our newsletter as well. But this is just an absolutely remarkable feat. We want to thank you on your leadership and on behalf of all of the Knowledge Hubs. And you made us look all good, and we are all very proud of you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I mean, you guys heard it. It's not only now nationally recognized, but through ICSB, I guess we go worldwide.
We're going intergalactic, Brenda, intergalactic.
All right, all right. And then one more thing, and this is just an action from you. If you want to hear more about our workshops and seminars, you don't have to be a Houstonian to be a part of many of the things that we offer. So make sure that you follow our at HCC Entrepreneurship on your Facebook. All right, now we're really getting started with why we're really here. So Michelle, I know Dr. Taravishi mentioned you and introduced you, but I also wanted to add a little bit more. You know, you, besides that you are co-founder and director of operations here at Impact Hub, you know, you're originally from Mexico. You're Latina. And one of the things I love about you is you're a true change maker. You know, you're breaking the glass ceiling for a lot of the Latinas in our community and even all across the U.S. And you know, you were one of the youngest Latinas working in the liquefied natural gas industry, which is really hard to break into. Now you're like even like opening the doors to a lot of young professionals with your nonprofit called Creative Vida. And well, I leave it up to you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. So I again, thank you all for hosting me today and for giving me another opportunity to share what I love to do with the community to hopefully inspire future change makers to take actions towards the things that they are passionate about. As Brenda mentioned, I am originally from Mexico, but I grew up in Southeast Houston. And it's funny because I always tell people this, I felt like I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, even though they didn't necessarily call themselves that. And so I remember that when I was young, at least one of the weekends from every month, we had this routine in my family where we'd wake up super early in the morning and all the kids get in the car, and we had about a 4-hour route that we would take to go to different garage sales across like 3 different neighborhoods. And we did that about once a month. One of the reasons why we were doing that though is because my mom, who at the time, she was Monday through Friday, she was cleaning office buildings, but on the weekend she had her own stand at a local flea market. And so on the weekends, we would go and look for merchandise that we could potentially resell, something that had some value that she would identify that would be worthy to be in her stand on the weekend. And so I literally, it was like all my childhood, that was my weekends. One weekend we'd be at the garage sales, the other 3 weekends from super early in the morning till around 3 or 4 p.m., sometimes 5 p.m., we would be helping her with the business at the flea market. And so I remember seeing that growing up and thinking like, I don't think this is for me, like the entrepreneurship piece, because there was other initiatives that her and some of my sisters even in elementary school would try to sell candy and like scrunchies and like all these things, right? And I remember thinking like, wow, that's really cool, but that's really not for me. But what I did learn from it was that work ethic. Like that work ethic to me has like to this day like resulted in who I am today, because seeing that and seeing the passion behind it, and a bit was the need because we needed to help pay our bills. That really stuck with me. So when I went to college, I decided to study business, and I majored in supply chain management. And just like many other people in Houston, I went straight into the energy industry, like Brenda said. And so 4 years I was at a consulting firm working mostly on LNG projects in Latin America and some items in North America as well. But then the 5th year, I transitioned to work for one of the first LNG exporters in the United States. And I remember though that through those years, and really after college, being that I was a first generation college grad, I always felt like I had this need or desire to really pass along everything that I learned. And so what that resulted in was that I spent many years doing skills-based volunteering with different nonprofits. And one of the things that I really loved doing in those roles was really helping them problem solve and figuring out how can I use my operational, my supply chain skills to help this nonprofit better serve the community. And ultimately, like Brenda mentioned, that led me to launch my own nonprofit, Creative Vida, a couple of years back. And eventually, in 2018, I actually decided that I wanted to focus full time on my community efforts and splitting time between my corporate job in the daytime and waiting till I got home really late. It wasn't creating the impact that I wanted to see. And so I made that transition, and my intention was I'm going to go into the nonprofit space because doing good, the only thing I could associate with doing good was nonprofits. Well, a few weeks in, I found out about social entrepreneurship. And that totally changed my mind. And I'm really excited that I get to share with you a little bit of an introductory of really what is social entrepreneurship and what you can learn from it, why it's important. And I would love to start off with really the traditional scopes, right? So when you think about business entity, you're either one for-profit or you're nonprofit. And that's really the spectrum that I grew up with. It's very black and white in a sense. I've discovered many more colors in between since then, but typically this is your frame that you have to work with. And so obviously for a traditional business, you're revenue driven, and it's all about the bottom line. You typically developed a product, a service, or a process with the intention that a consumer will pay you for that item. So it's very profit revenue driven. A traditional charity is typically an organization that, yes, you're there to help provide to help service a need in the community, and it's all about societal benefits. But typically, instead of having a direct consumer that pays you for the goods, you're typically dependent on grants, on donations to actually be able to execute your solutions that you've had. So social entrepreneurs fall somewhere in between the two. And the Ashoka Institute actually defines social entrepreneurs as individuals with innovative solutions to society's most pressing social, cultural, and environmental challenges. So already you see a distinction between traditional business, a for-profit business, who is simply creating this either product, service, process to just sell it and have someone buy it without that connection to what is this truly helping to solve either in our society, our culture, our environment. You already start to see that distinction. The way that I like to really refer to social entrepreneurs is a little bit simpler, and it really is that we're problem solvers. And we intentionally launch businesses to implement those solutions that we've identified and that we've created to solve those problems that we are passionate about. And so now with this definition, you see some connections to the charity, right? You think, well, that's what a charity does, right? They have a solution. They figured out how can I fill this need for society? But the difference there is that the charity typically isn't set up as a business structure in that it's revenue, has revenue coming in that is not solely dependent on donations and nonprofits. And we'll get a little bit more into that as we go through. But the other piece that I wanted to bring back to your attention is that a traditional organization, traditional business, you have that one bottom line, which is profit, right? Well, in a social enterprise, we have what is called a triple bottom line, which is a focus on people, planet, and profit versus just profit. And the belief here is that companies should commit to focusing as much on the social and the environmental concerns as they do on profits. And in my opinion, we need even more businesses that do this. I feel like today's cultural environment, we are starting to see a push for really holding business accountable to people and planet versus traditional profit. But can you guys imagine a world where from the creation of the business concept, you had the person that you're going to serve, the stakeholders, and you had consciousness around how it will impact, how your supply chain will impact the environment, how it will impact our planet, having those two pieces at the core, before starting to think about, well, how are we going to now make money? So with that, I actually wanted to walk you through in brief what the spectrum really is of social entrepreneurs. So what you see here on my screen is, again, we had on the left the traditional nonprofit, and then on the right we have the traditional for-profit. Well, all that you see in between is really where a social entrepreneur lies. And what the difference is as we go through is that you start seeing some changes in how that business has structured their revenue generation. And so if we go through, so a traditional nonprofit, I'll use an example that probably a lot of you are familiar with, which is United Way. So United Way has a lot of programs, services to meet the community, and they are majority driven from donations, from grants, and that's how they're able to execute their services to the community across the United States. If you go over to the next piece, a nonprofit now that has income generating activities, a perfect example is actually our local impact hub here in Houston. So there's over 100 impact hubs around the world, but each of them get to select how they will be structured as a business. And so in Houston, we decided to, at the initial stages of our organization, to register as a nonprofit. Now, although we do have donations and some grants that come in to help meet the needs of our operations, we actually also have general revenue generating activities, such as, for example, membership fees. Also, sometimes we have programs that we charge fees for, and then with those fees, we're able to continue to have our operations. And then there's several other nonprofits, for example, that I know one local nonprofit in Houston that they actually have a cafe in their lobby, and the cafe helps generate revenue for the nonprofit. The cafe also sometimes hires directly from the stakeholders of the nonprofit, again, meeting a second piece of the intention that the nonprofit wants to serve. But that's another example of kind of that you're still a nonprofit, but you have income generating activities so that you're not solely dependent on grants, on donations. And then you move over another step, and then you have your traditional social enterprise. So the social enterprise, and again, you could be registered either as a nonprofit or for-profit, but typically you'd be a for-profit, but it's an organization like, for example, Just Add Beats. It's a local entrepreneur here in Houston. They are a creative studio production workshops and camps, and they service K through 12th grade students. This is a for-profit organization, works directly with the schools to meet the needs of the students. And they have an interesting model where they charge a fee to the school, so it's free to the student, they don't have to pay. They charge a fee to the school, and then they have a couple of different tiers based on the market that they're serving. And when they're able to serve a market that has more a larger budget for these type of activities, they then use that budget and they reinvest it into the mission, and then they're able to also serve communities that don't have significant budgets or have a budget at all for this type of program. But their intention at the end of the day is still to help bring these opportunities to the students, to help them develop these 21st century skills, but through audio production, through beat making, video production. And so they found a way through their revenue model to service all the communities that they want to service. But again, they're actually a revenue generating for-profit organization. And then when you go to the other side of the spectrum, that's really when you start thinking about for-profit businesses that are either capping on a sense of social responsibility after the fact. And so a lot of the ones that fall under the spectrum are like oil and gas companies, right? So oil and gas companies are large corporations. They have their intention as a business, they have their product, they have what they sell or their service. And that service may have nothing to do with servicing a need in the community or having a positive impact in the community. But the organization has decided that they want to have some corporate social responsibility in their aspects. So you have the example of a socially responsible business. I'm going to throw a random example out there. Somebody that manufactures cups, right? Well, have a coffee in the morning. Somebody that manufactures cups. The cup, I mean, you're not really solving a big problem there by manufacturing cups. But to be a socially responsible business, you might say, I'm going to really focus on my supply chain of how I'm manufacturing the cup and think about how I am being socially responsible with the environment, with the people that are working to manufacture the item through the process. That could be a socially responsible business. But the mission of the business is not necessarily to solve one of these social, environmental, or cultural problems. And then the one we're most familiar with is the corporate, the socially responsible CSR departments and corporations that'll say, oh, we're having charity events, or we are donating money to these nonprofits, et cetera. And that's our give back. It's kind of a component that's kind of to the side of the business versus it being like the core and the foundation of the business. And then you have your traditional business that doesn't have any of that, or not yet anyway.
Well, and actually that also reminds me, going back on the socially responsible business, I mean, like all of the straws, for example, like it started out as plastic, and now, I mean, you see them even in restaurants where they're like made out of metal, you know, to be socially responsible. So cool. Well, I have a question for you, Michelle, before you go on. You know, with all this hybrid spectrum that you just presented us, you know, and from what you shared just, you know, throughout your presentations, like how can a social entrepreneur find the balance between, you know, between creating income and also creating impact?
That's a great question. It's really hard to find the balance, but I think it's always a matter. So I'm a supply chain person, right? Like that's how my brain is wired. And I found it interesting that it was so easy for me to incorporate the things I was trained to do for the energy industry into the nonprofit space. And so when I'm thinking about like you're thinking about forming your social venture and thinking through like that's your revenue structure, I like to take things like in sequence, right? So what's most important is that if you're starting first and foremost with developing that solution for the problem that you really care about and you're really passionate about, that already will give you that foundation that you need to then build on top of that and then build a sustainable business. Obviously, in order for your social enterprise to be sustainable, to be successful, to actually be able to implement, to expand the solution that you will create, you do need to be able to generate revenue. So it is something that you have to start after you've figured out what the problem is that you want to solve. You've worked through different options of how you could solve it. I think this is where that iteration process begins, of testing out those solutions and going to market and figuring out, well, how much will people pay for it? First of all, is it working, right? And then secondly, well, how much could people pay for it? Who could pay for it, right? Maybe it's not directly the person that's going to receive the product or service. Maybe it's somebody else, but who is paying for it versus just like a donation, right? So I think taking that step of doing the different iterations, doing the tests, I mean, going to market, right? Testing your solution just like you would do for a regular business, testing out the different price structures, understanding that it's not this just like one-time thing. You're not just going to sit at your desk and figure it out and write, this is my strategy and boom, go, that's how it's going to work. Understanding that, I think, would really help to get to the balance point.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It kind of reminds me also of work-life balance, you know, what is balance for you and how does that mean to your schedule, but on the business spectrum. And then also, like, what do you think government or society's role could do to encourage more of social entrepreneurship?
So I feel like society is ahead of government because you're seeing it today, right? People are being super vocal about how they want businesses to run, how they should run. We're all part of this human species, right? And we all have our roles to play in that species. But even as business owners, I hear this a lot. You hear well, this is my business, right? And this is how I want to run it. And I get that, but like your business is interacting with the rest of humankind. And it needs to service all those pieces in one way or another. And so I feel like from the society's piece, we're keep using your voice, basically. Keep using your voice, keep demanding the things that if you see something that is wrong in the way, in the nature of business, say something about it. And we're seeing 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 13-year-olds have a massive impact on business today by simply expressing and being vocal about what they're seeing that needs to change. And so seeing that, but also another piece is being open to change, right? I understanding that, yes, maybe you have, so we have the spectrum up, right? So maybe right now you are a traditional for-profit entity, but in this time, in this period, your mind is now being open to new possibilities, new options. Having that openness, I think, is super important, because that's what then leads you to start thinking through, well, then how could I change? What could I do? What can I start implementing? How can I change my employment practices, for example, right? So I can really improve that, reducing inequalities through empowerment of financial empowerment of my employees. And there's so many other pieces that you can do. So just being open to change in a way, but it's progress, right? It's progress. Being open to that, being collaborative in that. But then from a government standpoint, honestly, I see sometimes more support from other governments, and especially in Latin America. I am through Impact Hub, where we have a lot of hubs in Latin America as well. So almost on a daily basis, I'm communicating with the entrepreneurs there. And I see so much more support in Latin America for social entrepreneurs than I do in the States. And so I feel like having more intentionality, we can definitely learn something from our counterparts south. And I'm seeing support in terms of providing grants for educational funding, so that individuals that are interested in launching business can understand and go through programs that will actually help them launch a social centered business, a mission driven business. And having more of those programs would be so beneficial for us here in the States, because it would also just raise awareness that this is an option, right? Not all business has to be strictly profit, 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 profit. You could be doing good and doing well, which is also why I'm in the space.
Well, and without going political, but maybe in the next 2 weeks, or when election day comes, like, things will change in our nation. So we shall see, and hope and pray that that's the case. How do you measure social impact?
That is actually one of the most difficult challenges that our social entrepreneurs have, especially those that are trying to go at it alone. Measuring impact is really, it's difficult sometimes, because some of social enterprises, you don't have a tangible, like, it's not something that you went in, you did a class, and then boom, here's the result. Some of the problems that social entrepreneurs are trying to solve, there are problems that are going to take a long time to actually see the results, right? It's systemic change that social entrepreneurs are trying to solve in most cases, and whatever that means for the respective communities. But with that said, there are a lot of metrics out there, guiding points that can help you figure out, well, what do I need to measure? So that's the other piece, is in measuring impact, it has to be unique to the work that you are doing. You don't need to have 100 indicators, right? Sometimes you just need to have 2. You need to know how many youth from ages 15 to 18 did we service this year? How many, if it was an entrepreneurship program, for example, how many ended up launching a business after 6 months, after 12 months? How many, like, you can think through all those pieces, and depending on what problem you are trying to solve. But it really is dependent on the type of organization that you are going to launch and the problem that you want to solve. But having at least at the minimum, like a number that you can add to the stakeholders that you are serving, at the lowest level, that is where you can start. But then you can build on that as you start to develop your business.
Thank you, Michelle. Tell us a little bit more about you mentioned your background as to how you got involved with social entrepreneurship, but why exactly do you feel so passionate about this? Like, why are you doing this?
Thank you. I told you guys that when I switched careers, I said I'm going to go into nonprofit, because it's the only thing that I like identified as a place where you can go and do good. And after discovering social entrepreneurship, the impact space, first of all, I realized that I found the perfect place for me to combine my business and corporate experience with my nonprofit volunteer experience. Literally, it was like a perfect combination for me. But what the next like thing after I started educating myself more on the different on the lingo, on the terminology, on like all the players, I realized that I had been a social entrepreneur for about 7 years and not known it. And because I didn't know it, I also didn't have access to the network. I didn't have access to the resources. I could have had way more progress with my ideas if I would have been connected to that network, if I would have even known that it was an option. And so one of the reasons that now I'm so passionate about being in this and by doing talks like this is because I want to find those people that were like me, that have that idea right now, that have that passion to give back, and that might be saying, I have to pick one or the other, right? Because I'm immigrant, I'm from an immigrant family, and I'm the first person in my family that went and graduated from college. So I was also the first person that went and was able to have a corporate job and make significant amounts of money. And when you are in that position, it's hard for you to say that, to give time to the things that you like, oh, but my passions are here. You kind of have to say, no, well, that's not responsible. You have to prioritize certain things. But if I, for example, would have known that this was an option at that time, like there's courses in college now that you can actually take around like sustainability, around social entrepreneurship. When I was going through school, that wasn't the case, or if it was, it wasn't the case significantly in Houston. And so I'm passionate about spreading this message so that I can get to those people that were like me, so they can realize that there is alternatives and that you don't have to pick one or the other, and you can do good and do well by being part of this amazing movement.
I love it. I mean, I feel like I can just relate with you on that, because when I was going into college, like the only thing that I was passionate about or looking into was international business, because that's what people were like doing and knowing about, like, you know, a lot of like the multinational corporations. Entrepreneurship was not cool, you know, like it is now. I guess it's taken 10 years to get there. But, you know, I'm just so happy and so passionate about this job, you know, that we get to share with each other. And then where can our audience go from here? Like, are there any calls to action?
Yeah, so I wanted to end with some homework, I guess you could say, for anybody that's interested in social entrepreneurship, or anyone that just wants to do the exercise of it. And so we need you guys. We know you're out there. We need you. The world needs more social entrepreneurs. We need more socially responsible businesses. And whether you'll be the one to create it or you'll be the one to help someone else create it, it's so important to still go through the exercise I'm going to share with you guys today. So for your homework, one of the ways that you can start to even navigate this social impact space and figure out your role really in the ecosystem, I like to start by asking everyone to write out the things that you really care about. What are those things? I know it sounds so simple, but like, when's the last time you actually did one of those brain dumps on paper and said, okay, well, here are the things I'm passionate about? Because by the way, they changed from probably 6 months ago, and they're probably different from a year ago and 5 years ago, or the last time you did a leadership class in whenever that was, right? So it's really fun, and it's really enlightening to make that time to do this brain dump of the things that you care about. Reflect on why you care about those things, and then take it a step further and try to think about, when did you first interact with that issue or that whatever that was, and who was involved in that experience, right? Who did it impact, and where in that process did your view change? So for example, using me as an example, I say today I'm a huge champion for education, and especially for young girls, because I lived it and I saw the result. I grew up in a kind of a rough home, and for me, education was like my gateway out, and it helped me stay sane in a way. And I remember that because I did that, down the road, like it paid off. And if I hadn't had that as my avenue, then I might have picked other avenues, right? And I saw today, everything I'm doing today is because I continued to push forward with my education, and it was a challenge and it was a struggle, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have mentors and all those other pieces. But now that I'm in that role, this is one of the things that I care about. I care about education. I care about empowering young girls to pursue higher education development because I lived it, because I remember the experiences I had. So take some time to write those pieces down, those things that you care about, reflect on why you care about them, who that they impact, etc. So then after you're finished with that exercise, I encourage you to do what is referred to as a passion, skills, and problem triangle. There's actually a class on Acumen that you can go and you can actually walk through this whole step, and there's a whole course, and then at the end you have this exercise that you can do. But in summary, how it works is that take some Post-its or just get a sheet of paper and write it, do 3 columns and do one that says passion, skills, and one that says problems. And write down what are some of your passions. So for me, it would be like dancing or gardening, running, whatever your passions are. And then on the skills side, write some of your skills. So like visual design, mechanical engineering, teaching, or for me, operations, supply chain, strategy, organizing things. And then on the third piece, the problem, write some problems that you see or that you've noticed. So it could be homelessness. It could be lack of girls in STEM careers, whatever that is for you. And I try to do about 10 per section. And then when you're done with them, and again, the Post-its kind of work a little better because you get to move them around. Try to create groups between 3, 1 from each column, and try to create groups and use that as a way to kind of spark your creativity and your problem solving. And some of the matches might seem a little bit odd, but those might be the things that actually spark something new for you. So go through that process, write down your 10 for each, passion, skills, problem, do some sorting, some combinations, and then at the end, try to pick 1 from each that really stand out. And then have those as put them up as a triangle. And then in the middle of that, start the process of writing just 1 sentence of how those 3 things might actually unite and turn into something. And that already in itself is really your first step to starting to envision a social enterprise. And as you see, like, I'm not talking about revenue models. I'm not talking about this is the social entrepreneurship, guys. It starts right here. It starts right here. And then you get to, okay, the business, the structure, the revenue models. But if you guys could just do those 2 exercises, that'll really get you on the way. And I have extra credit if you guys want it too.
Yeah, please.
If you really want.
Before you even say that, actually, I do have a participant on the line. She's all the way in Kenya, and she says, she's asking, is like, what would you advise be for startup social entrepreneurs like me who are running social enterprises in Africa, and there's not a lot of support in the country or in the nation. So, but there's a huge need, and the organizational mission is so dire, it's really hard to drop because it would affect the beneficiaries. So do you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, so one of the very first things I'm going to suggest is that look for the nearest impact hub near you, because we do have several impact hubs in Africa. And especially right now that we are in this COVID world, a lot of these pieces are virtual. So if you do have access to any type of tech, figuring out how can you apply for some of these local programs that will actually help you build out this social business that you're working on, because there are a lot of programs in and out of the continent that are there to support entrepreneurs just like you. And we're actually running one right now, but the applications are already closed. So stay in touch with the Impact Hub Network, seriously, because the resources and connections that are there, they're just mind-blowing. And we actually have I'll put it in the chat later. We're running a free Global Connect membership that anyone can get access to. So even signing up for that free global it's a virtual membership, signing up to there and then getting those connections, those resources, and that in itself can support you.
Yeah, because I mean, it doesn't mean you have to have the network right there locally.
Yeah.
Now you have a network globally with us, with Impact Hub. I do know Nairobi had one just when I visited a long time ago, but please do check out Impact Hub there in Nairobi. All right. Okay, well, what was the bonus credit that we're going to share?
So bonus question. So do your map of things that you care about, do your passion, skills, problem triangle. And then if you feel like really empowered or really excited about the idea, challenge is to try to start drafting what is called your theory of change. Really, theory of change is also one of those, if you think about it, it's a little bit different, but when you start a business, everyone wants to start with what's your mission and what's your vision. When a social enterprise, yes, you have your mission and your visions, but when your theory of change really talks through how you plan to make this impact, and it incorporates all the things like what will you do, and in plain words, right? There's no like fancy, this could be a paragraph of 5 sentences. It's about what will you do? What do you expect will be the results from that? What are some outcomes? What's the impact that you want to create? And maybe even including some assumptions. For example, if we're doing a program to help with digital literacy, helping people learn how to use computers and use all the technology behind it. Something so simple as writing one of your sentences to be, we are working with women who are mothers and are likely working 1 to 2 jobs, and they don't have, they didn't go to college, so they didn't have higher education, and we want to teach them how to use computers so that they can take advantage of some online education. Do you guys see how the language that I'm using, like it's just very like if you're talking to someone, explaining to them what you want to do, and then take that step. And you guys can, I mentioned Acumen earlier. Acumen has some great free classes as well that walk you through all these steps. They have another great course that helps you to actually work on a theory of change. But even if you have a 30-minute break sometime this week and you're having your coffee, try to do these 3 things in that 30-minute break, and that already will get you a step closer to becoming a social entrepreneur.
I love it, Michelle. We also got another question from Aeneas, I think it's your name. Sorry if I mispronounced it. And the question is, how do I sustain my social, like the initial social purpose? And the second question is, what solutions do you have for a startup social enterprise addressing challenges such as access to finance and talent?
So how to sustain the initial social purpose. I think, is it that you're asking how to keep like mission alignment in a way? Or if you can, if that's it, maybe you're referring to, challenges are going to come up in the process. And the other part is that when you have a business, a traditional for-profit business, the accountability lies with your shareholders, right? Or your investors. And the decisions that you make in your business typically are decisions that you'll make based on how will it impact the shareholder, the person that's going to receive financial profit, revenue, all those pieces. How is it going to impact them? And then you decide, you know what, we're not going to go into that next market because my shareholders, they're not happy about that, blah, blah, blah. A social enterprise, though, you're always thinking about that mission, and your accountability falls with your stakeholders, the people that you're serving versus the people that are going to financially profit from your business. And so as you're developing your enterprise, every decision that you make in a way is supposed to be led by how it will impact your end user, right? Your stakeholder. And so having that, whatever that mission is, having that top of mind with the decisions that you make as you choose to expand, as you choose to, I mean, you're gonna, even if you set a strategy today of what your financial model is going to be like, it might change in a year because you might see that the market didn't respond to it. But that doesn't mean that what you're trying to solve doesn't need to still be solved, right? It just means that you might have to have some different iterations. So just, I'm not sure. Hopefully that was helpful for that piece of the question. The second one on solutions for startup, addressing challenges, access to finance and talent. Start finding mentors that are in that space. And I don't mean mentors that are in the social impact space helping people with finance. I mean, who are the people in the finance world that even if they're not doing any work with social impact or community, find those people because they also have that education and that talent and that access, and talk to them about your venture, talk to them about your solution, right? And figure out how can I, what's the word? Like, how can I, it's not onboard, but how do you get them to believe in the solution that you have so that you can get them as allies and supporters, because all that will do is just strengthen your offering at the end of the day. And that goes to any other industry that you guys can think of as well, like finding those mentors to help you through that process, but also to actually provide resources to your stakeholders is key in your development for your social enterprise too.
Yeah, and I must say, I mean, just going through my doctoral study, and this is actually my focus on my thesis, is the access to capital and a lot for the Latino entrepreneurs here in the U.S. is such a huge problem, and I guess I'm still putting it together, but just from what I'm learning a lot on the literature and academic world, a lot of the challenges is because in Latin America, you don't have to establish credit. That's huge here in the US. You have to start credit from since you're young, or even like for your business, like making sure that you don't use your personal credit for your business, because that also affects, you as a person. So that's like the number one thing. The second part is also making sure you have assets for when you have a business. I don't know if this is relevant, to other countries, but it's definitely a huge problem here in the US because, especially as an immigrant family, Michelle, we both can relate on this. You're starting from nothing, right? And you're going to be renting from the beginning and maybe for forever for your life. So creating assets is so difficult, and that's why a lot of the Latinos go into business, because they want to create, more revenue so that they can get out of that. But in order to access finance, in order to get more loans, get more capital for growth, you need assets. You need that history of both credit and assets, and that's where we get stuck. And so ultimately, I hope, from my doctoral studies, I'll start understanding if there's ways of addressing that. But if you're a social enterprise, and say something about that, and you have a model to follow, we're more than welcome to work with you and see how we can engage and bring that to Houston. Cool. And so the links.
I just dropped the link to the access for the free Global Impact Hub virtual membership. It's only free, I think, till the end of the year, but I believe you get it for a year. And this is a virtual one. But what it does, it gives you access to our global community app, where you can connect with other social entrepreneurs from around the world. And then you have access to some curriculums as well that'll come from time to time, some workshops and such. But feel free to check that out, take advantage of that, even if there isn't an impact hub. Likely it's best if there's not an impact hub near you. This is the great next resource.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Well, let's give a round of applause for Michelle and for her time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Michelle, I'm a professor at GW, and you were giving assignments and quizzes left. I felt I was a student here. So I was like, oh my God, what happened here? So congratulations. This is absolutely exceptional. Michelle, I have one last question to ask you here. This is more of my curiosity here, right? Let's fast forward when you get in 15 years or 20 years, when you have another young Michelle or another young Brenda experiencing or realizing what social entrepreneurship is, or kind of now it's been in existence for 20 or 30 years here.
Yes.
How would you like to see it? What is social entrepreneurship then? I'm very curious for that question. I know it's a difficult question and I'm putting you on the spot, so I apologize, but
No, I actually love that, because the first thing that came to mind was it's the default. Like, if you want to launch a business, it's social impact minded. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like you shouldn't have to be digging and digging and digging and digging to find the resources to meet the people that are doing it. It should be accessible. It should be a default. It should be a no-brainer. and there should be just so much more resources and connections and examples locally. Because one of the things I find is that, well, for me, so I found out about social entrepreneurship, but then I was wondering where they were. And I think some other countries a little bit more ahead than we are in the States. And so I found that a lot of the examples were in Europe, actually. And then later I found out there's also a lot of examples in Latin America. But I feel that the social entrepreneurship really started earlier on the other side of the world. And so props, they're way ahead. But it's also something beautiful about being to connect with someone that looks like you, that has a similar background as you. And so the goal for that would be, in the future, if you want to be a social entrepreneur, you can actually connect with one probably down the street, right? That would be phenomenal.
Yeah, or maybe just have a whole neighborhood of social enterprises and the restaurants there. You can be like, I'm going to the social, I'm going to go to the social neighborhood, SE neighborhood here. And then you spend your whole time. So with that, I want to thank Brenda and you as well for an exceptional webinar today for GW October. This has been absolutely remarkable here. So we're really thankful and appreciative of your time and effort here. I want to now announce tomorrow, because Thursday is our big day here. So tomorrow is kind of our we continue with it, but we have more sessions planned for Wednesday here. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, we start with a virtual nonsense pitch with Professor Stuart Levy. So the title itself is very intriguing and exciting, a virtual nonsense pitch. So I think you go up and you can just say whatever you want and see if people actually buy it. And then at 10 o'clock, Toward Industry and Society 5.0 with Dr. Ilias Krianis from GW, and he's going to continue his series. And then from 12 to 1, which is really exciting here, is Secrets for Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership, how students and alumni use well learnings to survive and thrive in their lives and careers, with Kathy Corman Fry, Siavara, Carly Berryman, and Yumina Sergey. And I think I killed all the names. And then from 1 to 2 p.m., we have another knowledge hub. And this is the San Diego State University Lavin Entrepreneurship Center with Dr. Alex Noble. And then finally from 3 to 4, and this is for all the young people here, and this is a really cool title here, You Inc. You know, you as a corporation, innovate in the classroom with Ruth Dwyer. And so tomorrow we start at 9 and we go all the way to 4. And then on Thursday is our big day. So thank you very much for helping with GW Entrepreneurship Week. This is historical because the whole week is online. So we're just excited with this. I want to thank you, Brenda. I want to thank you, Michelle. And we congratulate Brenda as well on the award. And Michelle, you're a rising star here, and we're lucky to have you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.